Fueled by Deathcast.
The other thing about the Prandtl Wing that I wanted to ask you is that you were developing, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was the Prandtl M,
right,
for Mars,
right?
What is the difference? What are you changing in this design to have it work in that atmosphere?
Okay, so Dave Berger was the guy, the principal for that, and the lead on that, and Dave is still working on it, and he's trying to get this so that it will fly on Mars. It turns out that the atmosphere on Mars is so incredibly thin. Okay, I want you to imagine this, that paper airplanes fly at airliner speeds on Mars. There's not an arm that exists that you can throw fast enough to make a paper airplane fly on Mars. Okay, you need a special launcher to get the paper airplane to go 400 miles an hour so that it can fly on Mars because the air is so thin. Now, because of this, you're not interacting with that many molecules. And it turns out that there's a stickiness, viscosity. You guys deal with fluids, viscosity, right?
Yep.
Okay, so imagine honey has a certain very high viscosity. You tilt the honey jar over and it takes forever to pour out, okay? As opposed to coffee. You pour the coffee, it's much closer to being like water.
Right.
Okay, so you have this difference in viscosity. That change in the viscosity, it's not that the viscosity changed, but it's the density of the air changed. And so the momentum of the air versus the viscosity of the air on Mars fundamentally changed.
Wow.
And because of that, we couldn't make those long, skinny wings work on Mars. It had to be a fatter wing. And so we made a fatter one and we twisted it just exactly the way we describe in here. And Dave and I would go round and round on this. And Dave would say, yeah, but I want to do this. And I said, okay, we can go there, but I don't think it's going to work as well for doing what you want. And we would go back and we would iterate. We must have gone through, I want to say, a dozen designs.
Wow.
To get to the point where we think we're close to a realizable solution. Now, there's a funny story here. I've talked to you about some of the crazy things that just happen to fall out of the sky, you know, and I don't think of coincidence. I mean, but that's what you could call it, right? I was visiting with interns down at JPL, and we had started talking to this JPL guy, and JPL is a really big place. And Saptarshi, and Indian kid, everybody's a kid for me now. He's probably in his 30s, got his PhD, brilliant guy. He's a real scientist. He wants to make this distributed network to try and measure the atmospheric water that evaporates and condenses during the daily cycle on Mars. But to do this, he needs a distributed network of Wi-Fi, and it turns out that the Wi-Fi signal changes by the amount of the water vapor that's in the atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
And he's got this calibrated. So what he was looking for was how can he create little Wi-Fi nodes and evenly distribute them over a small area in order to measure the transpiration, is what they call it, of this water vapor. So this was what he wanted to do. And so the experiment that Dave and I were working on right up until I left, and it still hasn't happened yet, we want to make a bunch of these little tiny Prandtl M's with these Wi-Fi things on them, and they're completely unguided. So you'll just dump, you know, it's sort of like a balloon popping, and all these little Prandtl M's are going to fly out, and they're just going to spread themselves out over this area. And what we want to provide for him, we want to do this off of a balloon launch over the lake bed at our place. With interns, students, and we're actually going to get the dispersion and how that distribution is over a certain area. And we're going to give that data to him to find out how much of an area he can then get his data for his experiment.
Wow.
And so I'm standing in line getting my lunch at JPL, and I place my order. I have to go down to the other end of the counter, and they'll get me my sandwich. And I'm standing next to this young, very sharply dressed Indian kid, and he's looking at my badge, and he says, "Are you Hal Bowers from NASA Armstrong?" I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "I'm Satarshi," and we're shaking hands in the middle of this lunch line, and it was so funny. And we were just laughing, and everybody's looking at us like, something's wrong with us.
So let's go.
But those sorts of things have happened so many times on our project. I love it. Again, NASA is that kind of place.
Yeah.